Hi, everybody. David Capes with Exegetically Speaking. I can't believe we have Emanuel Tov on the podcast. Yes, the Emanuel Tov, the most consequential scholar on the Dead Sea Scrolls in the last 40 years. He is an icon. He is a strong advocate for learning the original languages. And he's an amazing fellow, just a kind man. And he's been resident at the Lanier Theological Library in Houston for the last 3 months. We're going to miss him when he goes back to Israel. So today, Emanuel Tov on Exegetically Speaking.
I started my study of Hebrew at the age of 13 from knowing exactly nothing. After my bar mitzvah, I started studying Hebrew. And then I continued my study, and at the age of 20, I immigrated to Israel. I started studying at the Hebrew University. And then I lived already in Israel. Throughout my study in high school and later at university, one of the great virtues for my academic understanding of ancient texts has been the direct contact with ancient sources through the languages in which these sources were written. This was something completely natural for me. Well, when we were little children in Holland, of course, we learned all those languages, so it was not so difficult for me. We learned English, French, German, and Latin and Greek. So that was quite natural. But I think also in my later life, I cannot imagine studying the Hebrew and Greek Bible from English translations.
That's why we need to know the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic as well. Dr. Emanuel Tov, welcome to our podcast, Exegetically Speaking, here at Wheaton College and the Lanier Theological Library. So good to have you.
Thank you.
Now today we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the way it's said in so many English translations. What do we need to know from the Hebrew here?
Well, the first example I chose, I said to myself, there's nothing better than the first verse from the Hebrew Bible. Everyone thinks that he or she knows the verse, but it's much more complicated. And you cannot know the intricacies of this verse from the English translations. You think that you know everything from the regular translation, which is in the King James, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. And that's how we think about this. That's how I've been raised always. But what does it mean in the beginning? In the beginning of what? Was there nothing beforehand? It's only in recent years that this understanding has been changed. Of course, a different understanding was already in the Middle Ages suggested by the Jewish exegete Rashi. But this remained within that realm of exegetes. It was not really accepted among Bible scholars. But now, among modern translations, I read among two translations, and I quote from my book, Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, which is now in the 4th edition, here on page 8, where it's also the first example. The NRSV has something completely different. It doesn't have in the beginning God created. It has in the beginning when God created the heaven and earth. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." Likewise, the Jewish translation called the NJPS, when God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, "Let there be light." So in those two translations, there is no statement in the very beginning. The real statement is only in verse 3. So the statement is, God said, "Let there be light." The beginning is a dependent sentence. When God began to create. Now, you can accept or start to accept this understanding, but you really don't know what is the background of this understanding. You don't know what the background of this understanding is unless you know the intricacies of the Hebrew language. Now, the Hebrew language has two levels, basically actually three. It's the letters, the consonants, the vowels. So vowels would be A, I, E, etc. And then you have the musical signs. In the Hebrew language, with these vowels, you have such a situation, like if you write the English word bit, B-I-T, you would write in Hebrew without vowels B-T, bit. But the word bit you can pronounce in Hebrew also bit, bet, bet, boat, boot, bite, and many more ways.
So just put different vowels there in a way.
We need the vowels.
Right, yeah.
We need the vowels. And now one basic issue is, of course, in the very beginning, the Hebrew Bible was written without the vowels. The Dead Sea Scrolls were without the vowels. The vowels were written only in the 7th to 9th century. Before that time, the vowels, the vocalization, you might say, was only oral. So the tradition, or let's put it this way, the way in which the Hebrew Bible is now vocalized in the Masoretic spelling, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, is not necessarily the original way in which the Hebrew Bible was conceived. But, as the Jewish exegete Rashi already said, the original way was actually Bereshit bro, with a different spelling of the word Bet Resh Aleph, the second word of the Hebrew Bible. Now,
so instead of bara, it would be baro.
It would be bro.
Ah.
And there is a parallel to this. The parallel to this is the very beginning of chapter 5. And the beginning of chapter 5 reads, Ze Sefer Toldot Adam, Biyom Bro Elohim Adam Bedmut Elohim Asaoto. This is the list of the descendants of Adam when God created humankind. So the phrase Bro Elohim, literally the creation of or by God of man, we know from other place in the first chapters of Genesis. Now, is the spelling, you might say, is the spelling that we have in the Masoretic text, Bereshit bara, is that a mistake? It's not necessarily a mistake, but it's a different tradition. So we have two traditions of the beginning of the Hebrew Bible, but many scholars today And definitely those translations understand this in a different way from what we see in the King James, from what we see in the Masoretic text. And this, the short message of this example is that you must know the intricacies of the Hebrew language and of the development of the Hebrew language in order to be able to deal in a successful way with the exegesis of the Hebrew Bible.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a great lesson for us here today on Exegetically Speaking, to hear you both read the text, but also explain the text in the beginning when God created. You know, I've heard that before, but it's a fascinating way. Thank you for sharing that here today with us on Exegetically Speaking. Okay, you thought you knew Genesis 1:1, right? There's more to learn when you dial in the original languages. Thanks to Ian Rosine, Rebecca Larson, and John Lansma, our Wheaton-based team, for their expert work. Congratulations to Ian Rosine. He knows why. If you want to study Hebrew and Greek, and if you just want to be an expert like Emanuel Tov, Wheaton College is the right place for you. I can't tell you how many biblical languages scholars that I meet and talk with who started their journey at Wheaton College. We have an amazing program at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Click on the link in the show notes and you get started today. If you like Exegetically Speaking, please subscribe and share it with a friend. There's a new podcast that drops every Monday. And who knows, Emanuel Tov may be back soon to talk about another passage. Maybe, Isaiah 7:14. I'm just saying. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.